guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week, and this is the show where I review all the comics I've read this week in one show. We go least favorite to best pick of the week and everything in between, and before I get started, we do at the end of the video talk about the viewer's pick of the week, so in the comments below, let me know your pick of the week for a chance to be featured. Also this weekend, I will be tabling at C2E2 Chicago, table M2, so go check us out there if you're in the Chicago area. It should be a fun show. So let's jump in. I had 11 comics. It was a smallish haul this week. Not that many huge books came out, but of course we will be talking about The Amazing Spider-Man. But don't worry, The Amazing Spider-Man is not number 11. So number 11 for me is actually one of the bigger books that came out this week, and that is Vatican City issue 1, this new Mark Millar book. Honestly, kind of pricey. It was about $6. Usually I feel like his books are a little cheaper. I remember when his other vampire book came out, I feel like it was like a $2.99 book. He was really trying to get people to jump on. But this is another vampire book. So it's these vampires, they take over everywhere in the world except the Vatican City, obviously because it's a holy place, so vampires don't go there, and that's pretty much the issue. It's really just a setup of figuring out why the Vatican City is this holy place, and then in the end finding out why the vampires want to go there for their queen, so the queen's like buried in the Vatican City. I thought having a focal character would be a little stronger here. I feel like there was a lot of distance, and the art really pulled me out of it. I thought it was not very detailed. I'm sure it was going for a tone, but it just really wasn't for me. So overall, giving that one 2 stars, and that is number 11. Moving on to number 10, which is Uncanny X-Men issue 13. Nothing offensive about this issue. It just really is more my personal preference. I'm not a huge Gambit fan, so 2/3 of the issue is about Louisiana, one section timeline of that, Gambit in the Savage Lands, and then our newer characters, which I do like. I like their story a little more, but because you're dividing into 3 stories, a lot of it doesn't move because of it. Even though the art's good, it just didn't suck me in as much as I wanted to. So overall, giving that one 2.5 stars, and that is number 10. Moving on to number 9, which is The Incredible Hulk issue 24. This is your guest star type issue, which I feel like kind of is when a series spins its wheels a little bit, where you have like a guest star in a single issue and not in an arc, and you get to see Clea from Doctor Strange, which I haven't really been following, and then in the end you have Thor show up, and it's just like, all right, I feel like it's kind of buying itself time more than it really progressing the story. I thought the previous issues did a little bit better at the horror elements. The artwork is a little cartoonier than what Nick Klein has been doing with Hulk, so it just was a little underwhelming this issue. So overall, giving that one 3 stars, not bad, but also didn't kind of blow my mind. So moving on to the topic of the video, a little higher than I expected, and that is The Amazing Spider-Man issue 1. So this is a complicated issue, right? Because you got new jumping on point for Amazing Spider-Man fans, which I actually think this book does a good job at. It explains where Spider-Man has been and where he is going. Now, as a Spider-Man fan for 20 plus years, I know where Spider-Man's been, and I know where he's kind of going. There's nothing here that's like, wow, I can't wait until that happens. And that's where, you know, I get less excited about this issue. There's little interesting parts here where we get to see a little bit of Peter Parker's life of him trying to find a job. Have I seen him down on his luck on that? Of course. Him and his girlfriend is an aspect of this issue where they're not even going steady, and he's like, oh, you know, you're on probation right now. And then of course in the back of my head, I'm like, well, we've seen Peter have girlfriends before. How far can this go when it becomes more serious, or she becomes more of a character? Then where does Peter go? Or else, you know, MJ would be allowed to be a character. So that's kind of the back of my head. But also, if you're trying to have MJ and Peter be together, you're never going to enjoy Amazing Spider-Man books. So that wasn't in my head that much as I was reading it. More was in my head is the go with the flow stuff. I remember hearing that Rhino was going to be a character. I'm like, okay, well, you know what he's going to do, right? He's just going to fight Spider-Man. And there's little elements I liked about that, like in the end where it's like, oh my god, is Rhino gonna die? And you're like, okay, that's interesting. But then you jump to another part where Peter is with an old school friend, and that's how he gets to this job. And like, that's interesting. Let's see where that goes. And it's all like little things that could build into something interesting that are just kind of thrown at the wall in this issue. And same thing for the art. Art is good enough, but it feels really crowded. It feels like a lot's going on. And then you get the Green Goblin, Norman Osborn stuff, which really is just more Norman Osborn. I didn't really feel like it moved the needle. And then in the end, they introduced this new villain that kind of seems like every other villain. So it's hard because, you know, I think you should pick it up. I do think this is better than some of the previous stuff we were getting in that previous run. I do think there's a direction. I also even think this is new reader friendly. So if you've never read Amazing Spider-Man and for some reason you're like, I need to read Amazing Spider-Man instead of Ultimate Spider-Man, then you have this jumping on point. Do I think there's anything exciting in this issue? Not really. I think there's little promises and maybe as the series goes on, those little promises can be fulfilled, but I've been on this roller coaster a couple of times. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. So overall, 3 stars, kind of right in the middle there. And well, obviously I'll be picking it up more, but if you are on the fence of Amazing Spider-Man, I don't know if this is the one. This is not the Nick Spencer run for me, right? Because Nick Spencer, I know a lot of people don't love his run, but honestly, I thought he had a really good beginning to his run. I remember reading it and being like, wow, Spider-Man's back on track. You have amazing art, you have a great story. And it's really not until like middle of that run in the end where things kind of go lopsided. Moving on to the next issue, the next comic is number 7, and that is Absolute Batman issue 7. I like this issue, but it kind of drags its heels a little bit. It really depends on how much you like Mr. Freeze, but the thing I was more interested in was this character matches, which it seems like Bruce knew from his childhood and possibly the moment of the zoo, and I was like, oh, that's really interesting, but it also kind of feels like it was focusing on a lot of stuff. Like, I wanted to focus more on their friendship, but it really is the mystery of what happened to him and how that's connected to Mr. Freeze, and you get like a different angle on him. I think it depends on what side of Batman you like. If you really like the gritty, let's figure out what's going on with Batman villains, I think you're gonna like this issue a bit more. For me, I was enjoying more of what we got from that last issue and kind of building the supporting cast of Batman and building villains in that way. So giving that 3 stars. Artwork was also not as strong, I felt like, as we've been getting. It was a little bubbly for me. All right, moving on to number 6, which is Aquaman issue 4. As someone who's not an Aquaman fan, I'm still enjoying the ride. Like, I like him interacting with Superman's ex-girlfriend mermaid character that no one remembers, which is so fun. Like, I think this book does that in a fun way, where it's like, oh my god, that mermaid character that no one remembers, you're actually doing something with her. And you have a great opener with Mera. I think the reason why I couldn't go higher than 3 stars for this, though, is that you don't really do anything with that Mera opener, and you're trying to do more of the mythology stuff, but there is a lot of promising stuff in this issue. As someone who's not as big of an Aquaman fan, that kind of makes me stick around for it with, you know, some solid enough art. So giving that 3 stars, and that is number 6. Moving on to number 5, which is Phantom Road issue 11. This is a continuation of a book that's been on hiatus for a little while, and I wanted to see more from our main characters, which is why it's not like number 1 or number 2, but I like the connections enough. I believe this is the father of that detective person. It's been a while since I've read it, but I think that's this character, so we're getting to see the history of that and hopefully the history of what these phantoms are, and obviously I want to learn more about that. That's a big part of the series. So I think there's promise on what they're building, but I also just kind of want to see our main characters because it's been a while. So giving that one 3.5 stars, and that is number 5. Moving on to number 4, which is Green Lantern Corps issue 3. Another one, I don't know if it's personally for me, but there's something that makes me gravitate towards it. Like, Corps, even back in the Jeff Johns days, were never my favorite because I don't love team books very often, honestly. There's always a lot of characters that they're trying to balance. Like, obviously, I've read good team books, but it's not my go-to. I'm usually more of a solo character reader. So Green Lantern Corps, you got a lot of voices, you know, you got a lot of people talking, but I think this issue does a really interesting way of balancing those voices with, especially John and Hawkgirl. I really, really like them. I think they're a linchpin of this series, and obviously everything that happened with the Red Lanterns, but most importantly, as a Green Lantern fan of the main series, you also get continuations of that sorrow story. So it makes everything feel like you need to read this book. It feels connected. So it makes me not want to drop it, even though I feel like the artwork is not as strong as the Green Lantern main series, but there's something about it that keeps making me want to hold on, even as someone who is not really built to like this series. I kind of still like this series. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 4, I believe? I think that was number 4. Moving on to number 3, which is The Ghost Spider, Spider-Gwen, issue 12. I was kind of surprised by this book because everything about it feels very Jump the Shark to me. It feels like, why is she going in space? Obviously, even still, the idea of her being in the 616 feels weird to me. Her teaming up with Loki. But for some reason, Stephanie Phillips makes it work. Like, her even being this cosmic cube character. I was like, oh, but there's this emotion that's written here that kind of makes sense about it. Granted, does it make me want to read this instead of her just going with her rock band and being Earth 65? No, I'd rather read those stories. But if we do need to have Gwen in this because of editorial reasons, like, I'm kind of having fun with it. It's like everything that could go wrong doesn't go wrong with this issue, and I'm kind of having a fun time with it. It's also a little darker than you would expect from the artwork. Again, it surprised me. So I'm going to give that one 3.5 stars, and then it's number 3. Moving on to number 2, which is an indie book, and that is A Golden Rage, Mother Knows Best, issue 1. This was a fun issue. I didn't really know what to expect. It was kind of a get a book on whim type series where we get to see these group of older women. They are put into this island where, like, we don't want you anymore, and they all kind of live together in harmony. And then we get to see this baby come to be, and you're like, oh, this is interesting. Obviously, it's really a commentary on how we treat older women, how we treat the elderly. Okay, now a baby's involved, like a younger child, where we get to see these like mother figures be a part of that. So it definitely built an interesting world, and it even built the cast pretty well. So I'm interested to see what's gonna happen next. I thought it was an interesting opener. So I'm giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 2. Moving on to number 1, which is Jumpscare issue 2. I really like how this book balances superhero with horror. And it's this character that is a horror superhero. You get these like weapons that are from obscure horror movies, and she has to decide if she's gonna help her family who wrote her off because she was different and save her sister. And that's really this whole issue, is her trying to decide, do I do that? And you learn more about the family and that relationship. Although I also get some action superhero moments too. I thought it was just a well-balanced issue with really great crisp art and just like a fun take on the slasher hero, while again blending it with a different genre that we're very known to read in comic books. So I'm having a fun time with this one, giving that one 4 stars. That is my pick of the week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno. Let me know in the comments below what your pick of the week was, and last week's pick of the week was Absolute Green Lantern, and here are some comments about that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.